Hi, I'm Levi Polzin. Welcome to another episode of Under the Surface. Today we're going to be covering this book, Vintage Tattoo Flash, 100 Years of Traditional Tattoos from the collection of Jonathan Shaw. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, today we have Vintage Tattoo Flash, 100 Years of Traditional Tattoos from the collection of Jonathan Shaw. I will preface before we get into this book, since we are dealing with traditional American and European tattoos, some of this stuff can be kind of prejudice in its imagery and or outright sometimes racist. I don't think there's too much of it in this book, but I just wanted to reference that point that's kind of a history of American and European traditional tattoos. It's not the greatest thing, but it is something that is prevalent. Like I said, I ran through this book, and I don't think there's really too much of it in here, but I wanted to preface that could be in here, and if we see any of those images, we'll talk about them, and probably maybe some history behind them, but if I do know any history of why maybe those images came about. But if you were possibly triggered by images like that, you may want to skip this video. Or maybe you want to dive in just to see what possibly could be. Anyways, here we go. This is a pretty thick book, by the way, so this will probably be a pretty lengthy conversation. I mean, right out the bat, this wolf tattoo is just awesome. And how many times have you seen this taken and used and redone and reshaped, which is awesome, which is one of the great takeaways of traditional American tattoos and even traditional Japanese tattoos, is how that stuff is, reshaped and rethought throughout, history. Really cool faded classic, just probably some signage maybe that was in the building or in the window or something. It just says that it was found Bowery, New York, circa 1900 and 1920s, but unknown is the artist. So cool imagery though. I used to do, probably in the first 10 years, I did a lot of like repaints of this and would just like use these varnishes that were super dark to try and get this same type of effect, because I just thought it was super cool. I really love this page with all like the Kewpies, and it's just got a great like wonkiness to it. These images are super simple, could be tattooed very quickly, was definitely the style of what was going on. This says 1920s and 1930s, so you've got post World War I, pre-American involvement into World War II. But yeah, just really interesting simplicity to a lot of this stuff. And once again, this is from New York City, so I think we're going to see a lot of New York in here. Here's a cool page, and in case you're wondering, here's kind of what my inspiration was for that rose that I did the other day. I'd seen this picture, I remembered it, and so I was kind of tracing from memory the rose that I did a demonstration on the other day from out of my head from this one here. And this is Lou Lewis at Burt Grimm's in Long Beach, California. And just a great collection of roses on this flash page. I love like the black kind of cut arounds of things. Just super cool. I love the staggeredness of these roses. That would fit on great on a bicep, maybe even a forearm. That would fit great on a forearm. And it's because of like the cut ins and outs of the leaves and the shapes of things that it really allows for a lot of movement and openness on the skin. Some cool Burt Grimm pages. Here's some really funky kind of green in this leopard and this tiger, which I think is really interesting because we saw that in the Horitsune, that green, So I don't know if some of that comes from a limited color palette and you just want something else to attract to those eyes, because it really does bring you into the eyes of this tattoo, which is kind of what you want. Cool Mickey Mouse. Wolf head is really cool. This is a kind of cool little pirate women. Very minimally colored. I mean, this one pretty much is, all the rest of them are just pretty much just black and gray and red with maybe a little bit of brown on the boots. This one has a little bit of green in the sash, but other than that, they're black and gray and red. And still really striking, powerful images. These boats are really cool. I love all those. I mean, the shapes on them are absolutely perfect. For 1940s to 1950s, Texas Row, really, really cool. I mean, expertly designed for 40s to 50s. You know, every aspect of... I would bet that a lot of these are referenced from, like, old, like, naval drawings or something. Yeah, this one, I feel like this one, and then this one, and this one for some reason are really, and the Hellbound one are very interesting to me. I like the Hellbound one because this angle of the banner really lends itself to giving a lot of movement to the piece, whereas these ones are so stagnant, flat across the bottom. I feel like that one has a lot of movement to it. Would fit great on the body pretty much anywhere. Here we have a bunch of collection, more Texas Row, Eagles flags, you know, stuff like that. It, once again, really simple, but very precise in how it's all painted, especially for probably how small this was. I mean, this book is probably 8 by 10, maybe like 8.5 by 11 or something like that. Each page, and I would guess that each of these are probably 11 by 14, maybe 11 by 17. So not too much bigger than what we're seeing it here. Some cool stuff. Once again, pretty simple. All this kind of Jesus, Christian, Catholic imagery stuff is really cool. I really like the minimal color, and man, this Jesus right here is super cool with the roses on the bottom, the yellow halo, but just the rhythm of the green and red and the yellow, it's just masterfully done, I think. And that's always something I think you have to think about in your piece. Like if you're going to use a simple color scheme, or even if you're going to use multiple colors, you know, or many colors, I should say, thinking about the rhythm in which you're placing those. So they're kind of throughout the entire piece, or at least one color is kind of maybe being leading your eye throughout the entirety of the piece, which is kind of what the green is doing here, right? Like, so you see it down here in the leaves, and you see it up in the halo too, which brings your eye throughout the entirety of the piece. I really like this cross, Jesus on the cross too. It's kind of more ornate, which you would see like in a, you know, Catholic temple or whatever you call it. I never really went to church, so I don't really know. My parents, we were crazy hippies who lived in a carnival, so we never really went to church when I was a kid. It just wasn't part of our deal. Super cool. Just kind of blown up image of her off of this page. Couple other noteworthy things are the Roadrunner and Coyote. I like that they did the Roadrunner straight up, but yet the Coyote's kind of like a vampire coyote in a way, like with sunglasses and smoking. It's just an interesting choice. These cool little pinups are really rad too. I really like this one here with the negligee on, and how they rendered all underneath the negligee in the color of the negligee, green. Um, just super simple, something you can always apply, but extremely effective for such a simple image. Oh wow, these are cool. These like bubble girls, I'm guessing. I feel like, so this is 1940s to 50s, artist unknown. I have a feeling, I feel like I've seen a lot of this type of imagery from the 20s. Um, it's kind of where that classic image of the woman in a martini glass comes from too. There's some film with like that I'm like vaguely remembering of like of a woman like, and there's a dance scene and she's in a singing song in a maybe like a champagne martini glass type thing. But I think there's something along that lines with women like this where they're kind of dancing around with these kind of bubble outfits. And I would think that that's maybe where this is referencing from, because otherwise, what this is such an odd image, right? Like you've got this woman here, and she's just like covered in these weird, colorful balls of sorts. It's odd. Cool little penguins. Love these horses with just a little bit of red. Super cool. I don't really understand. There's this safety pin with a little bit of blood. I don't really understand that one, but it's kind of fun and interesting. Just different. I've never really seen that. Another cool little page. I'm sure they, here you can see that they're posting up like the different prices time and time again. They just like put a new sticker over top of it, and like, oh, it was probably $8, and now it's. I mean, this one you can see, you could probably barely see there, but it's like $13 for this little weird monster toe thing. This one looks like it's 15 for this little like rat in a zoot suit. But once again, the color is really lending so much movement to these pieces in here. Like, even if they're fairly stagnant in their design, like say this snake head with the dagger through it, it's really just a vertical placement with a little bit of a angular horizontal going through it. But all your rhythm of this piece is really happening in the color. So that red and green and how it's kind of just alternating between each other, even into the dagger, is lending to the interesting aspects of that tattoo. Not so much the movement of the actual piece. Here we've got some pretty rough and tumbly painted stuff. It's, Indio Tattoo Studio, San Juan, Puerto Rico. Yeah, super cool. I mean, clearly just tourist tattoos, or probably sailors coming through, maybe on leave or something. Oh, that's a great Death Before Dishonor. Love that one. The rhythm, I love the little like spottedness of the back end of the head of the eagle. Super cool. Soldier with Casper. Interesting. Here's a great Panther page. I mean, pretty much any of these are what you just want to copy. And I mean, I think the standouts are really this one and the one battling the snake. They're really like the person nailed it on both of those. And looks like that's Tex Rowe again. Super fun. Bert Grimm images again. I really loved how Bert Grimm did these kind of like he makes these little cutouts of stuff with these kind of colored backgrounds. I think it's striking for a page of Flash, and just striking as like an entire painting. And once again, really, really using that rhythm of color to utilize movement through the eye. And I think that's, once again, pretty common with American, European traditional tattoos because a lot of them are kind of softball shaped. You know, they're all kind of like in a circle a lot of times, maybe oblong a little bit. But that rhythm that often I talk about in Japanese tattoos, where you're looking with shapes and overall movement on the body, I feel like American and European tattooers were really utilizing that, but they were utilizing it within color. Some cool stuff on this page. This kind of bloody rose is interesting. I really love this snake here. That's super cool. The colors are great. The angel is really cool too. Here we got like, this is Zeke Owens, 1974, when he was in Denver, Colorado. Some really fun, just 70s fantasy imagery. You got like a weird, like, I mean, this is definitely pulled out of like some horror comics from the 50s right here. I mean, yeah, it's you got like a weird Hunchback of Notre Dame monster guy with a shovel and like a candle it's burning with a skull and a face on it. Yeah, I mean, that's straight pulled out of a horror comic from like the 50s. You got Bambi over here. A weird little like, I feel like this is his signature almost. Like it's a little spider with like a weird little face, apple face or something, and glasses. Some wizard imagery. This woman and a bunch of mushrooms. Some Tennessee Dave pages. Really minimal color, a lot of emphasis on yellow, it looks like. And that may just be that the red that he used, especially on this page, looks like it maybe faded away and it almost looks orange now. Or but whenever they photograph this. Cool patina to a lot of these. Once again, a really cool elongated skull and crossbones. I always like when skull and crossbones are done like this. When they're kind of more vertical. I don't really know why. The classic skull and bones where it's just a cross on the bottom has never really appealed to me. You got a cool couple here. Sorry, I was just thinking like of takeaways of what their tattoos were. He's got octopuses on both of his knees. I would wonder if he was, you know, what branch of military. He's definitely got a military hat, but I can't tell, you know, what that would be. But I would guess Marines of some kind or and whatnot. Maybe a diver even. She's got a cool Betty Boop tattoo you can see there. Really cool and interesting. I really like this ship with kind of like the big chains and stuff. It's such a small, simple tattoo, but there's a lot working in that one. This pirate with the polka dot sleeves, kind of fun too. Here you got a whole page of basically really wonky Betty Boops. This one's kind of cool. It's pretty much just red. The bottom images have a little bit of green in them, but all the top images are just nothing but red. That's probably just 'cause I bet this person just knew how to saturate red, maybe. They're just like, well, I know how to saturate red, so I'm going to paint my flash with red. This one's got some, I like ladies specials, and it's just these teeny tiny little ones. Which is funny because I feel like I always see a lot of photos of pretty heavily tattooed women from this time period. I like this rose. It looks very reference from life in a way, but yet is very, very lifelike. I'm gonna actually mark that one because I maybe want to do an example of what I think is working in that one later on. Some cool big pinups. Got a cowgirl and a woman with a peacock. This one's really cool. I love the little bit of cactus there. And the colors in the wood fence behind her. And just even how they ended it. It's pretty good. That's Burt Grimm again. Long Beach. Some more pinups. I feel like less effective. These are definitely like taken from just photos and not expertly simplified, in my opinion. This page, you've got a bunch of like Hindu imagery. A lot of Hindu stuff. There's Ganesha, a bunch of other gods that I don't necessarily know the names of, but interesting. I wonder, it said it was from the UK, but I wonder if there was just people who, because there was like stuff going on in India and stuff, or and even Indian sailors fighting for the UK, and I wonder if they were getting this imagery. Be interesting to know. And once again, you've kind of got a bunch of different, you know, here's like a Turkish flag design. You've got an Om with like a trident going through it, which I think is one of the things that Ganesha is usually holding. These are kind of like all like good luck symbols and stuff like that. Even the swastika, especially around like this time up until like right before World War II, you saw the swastika on pretty much everything. Like Coca-Cola bottles, postcards. You know, it was like a good luck image. It was all around, and pretty much you saw companies putting on absolutely everything. So to me, this reads of the time, which it looks like it's supposed to be 1930s, which is, you know, probably right before that image is going away in the minds of people as like a good luck image. Here's probably that same artist from a bit ago. Once again, UK, artist unknown, but some interesting kind of painterly aspects to it. Utilizing a lot of colors. I bet that they didn't even really have the tattoo. So that's kind of an interesting choice. It's kind of almost like trying to do some realism, you know, aspects there in the hair. It's not really quite working out for me, but it's interesting. Ace Harlan. Really cool. I love the bold line imagery and just kind of flat coloring of a lot of this stuff. All the horses really work for me. And the extra lines like in that neck and the neck in this one and showing like the muscles and stuff of the horse, I just think is really cool. Like you don't need any of those for shading, but they just look cool. You know, most of the time with traditional tattoos, I feel like utilizing less lines is the best, but really the excess lines in this one is lending to more interesting nature of these tattoos. And that kind of just goes to show there's no specific way to do anything, right? It's like you could be like, oh, traditional tattoos need to have like the simplest line possible, but yet these ones are kind of going against that with just putting all these lines in the neck and legs, but yet it's really working for the design, in my opinion. Cool imagery. I like this little stack of Kewpie kiddos here. It's kind of fun. This is a great kind of side-by-side. Burt Grimm. You've got the flash right here, and then you've got where he actually tattooed it. Pretty cool. I mean, they're a little bit different, but basically the same. Ooh, that tattoo looks rough. I'm sure that was painful. But the flash is super cool. I really like this one. Once again, I'm sure that's probably just straight snagged from a 1920s like comic illustration. And that's what a lot of these, you know, tattooers of this time were doing. They were finding early imagery and just straight stealing it. You know, they're out of comics, out of newspapers, out of advertising, movies even. Here you got a big Ace Harlan, battle royale, which is a eagle, snake, and dragon. I kind of like how all three of their heads are right in the center. I can't really tell if this imagery is looking a little too confusing because of that big tear down the middle, or if it is because all three of their heads are right in the center of this. But there is something about all three of their heads being right in the middle of this imagery that I do find really cool. Three little pigs. This snake and skull image is really great. I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on what. I like the layers of the skull kind of here in the cheek, but yet it's really open. I love how the cheekbone, or the jawbone, I'm sorry, goes right into the cheek with no like cutoff line there. And that's that kind of economy of line, right? Like, you don't really need to cut that off for you to understand what's going on there. Here we got Zeke Owens, 1971. Some more really kind of pop culture-y references. Popeye, another little Hanna-Barbera character or something there. I don't know their name. I like this fun little dragon down at the bottom. This stoned little cartoon dog that clearly stole from a cartoon. This hawk with a trout. That's pretty fun. William Grimshaw. I love the addition of the ducks. Just something you don't see as much, which if you were, this person's in North Fork, Virginia, which is, I know has a lot of hunting, so of course you're going to get a lot of hunters and they're like, I want to get, a duck that I'm hunting or something like that. So of course you're going to start putting that in your flash. Here's a cool page. You got a really wonky looking Pink Panther, a Zigzag Man. What year is this? 1969. Ted Eanman. Chains are cool. Probably really bikery stuff, Born to Play Hell. This is like your total like 60s biker flash page. Yeah. Super, super interesting. Like a take on the Hell's Angels. Some really rough stuff over here. This snake, once again, Burt Graham, I just love it. The movement of it, and then the rhythm of the green on the back and the red on the belly and where it's kind of coming and going is just perfect to me. Like, that's a perfect traditional American European snake. Artist unknown on this side. Really great use of color in this one. I feel like maybe I wouldn't have used green along this interior edge, maybe yellow or something, just to give a different color in there since you have green on these back spots. But I really like the shapes of the belly scales. They almost look like rose petals or something. Some cool ones here, some really simple stuff. I love how like kind of wonky these Jesuses are. Those are really cool. A little bit of rays on this one with clouds. Just some Sailor Jerry sketches of pinups. Still kind of working out ideas. 1958. Kind of interesting, like pen and ink almost rendering. This is Earl Brown, 1940. And I feel like this is slightly reminiscent, not as heavy-handed as some flash you would see a little bit later than this. spider web on this is really cool. How it's kind of spiraling around. You know, where this one doesn't work quite as much because the girl is a little too small, and all the spider webs are kind of just going the same direction or all directions. Whereas this one really works in a spiral, and the girl is a little bit bigger. Lends itself to a little bit more dramatics. I mean, here we have some imagery that's like just taken from Japanese prints, but really well simplified. Like they just kind of figured out like, oh, I like that. How can I take that and make that into a simplified tattoo image that I can achieve? No name on this page. UK, got a really kind of painterly style. The colors are great. Octopus on this page, and that looks a lot like those Burt Grimm ones. This is Tex Rowe again, but it looks a lot like those octopus you saw on the guy's knees that Burt Grimm did. I love the green in it. I love the eyes. This little boy riding this carp, which is totally taken like from like Kintaro riding the carp from Japanese mythology, but yet just kind of turned into like a little American traditional tattoo. We got Zeke Owen, 1971, more kind of fun, hippie, like Flash. You got some mating cartoon ducks. I really like this Snoopy with the propeller. I don't really get this crocodile with a screw going through it, but in a top hat. But whatever, you know. Some hippie stuff. There's a Casper the Ghost with a little peace sign tattoo, making a peace sign. Ted Inman again. Einman. These are really super simple, but really effective. You've got this young native woman design down here. The face is just so simple, but really, really effective. Some things don't work as much. Like I really like this hand in this rose. Don't love that snake, but the head's a little too complex for and the rhythm of the body just doesn't work for me. This kind of skull with the crown on it is interesting. Like I wonder what the concept behind that one is, of like, you know, like kill your masters or something like that. I don't know. But that's a fun one. I'd like to see that one redone. Greg James, Los Angeles, California, 1978. Here you're kind of almost starting to see some of that fine line black and gray that you'll really see start coming into its own in the 80s. But it's just now starting to creep in. Like the lines are a little bit more finer. You know, there's no color in it. It's super cool. Still very rooted in American traditional, but yet you can see the beginning concepts of that 80s wave of Los Angeles, California fine line. Here's some more Greg James. Just a year later, 1979. This one just says 70s. It doesn't have a date. But going far more into the kind of Chicano culture of Los Angeles in these ones, like really leaning into it. I think that's really cool because this is 79. So you're almost into the heyday of when this is just going to be blowing up in Los Angeles. Got a little Woody the Woodpecker just in total, you know, Chicano outfit with the baggy like pants and the big kind of oversized t-shirt and stuff. Really cool. Bandana on. I love this little shotgun with the handcuffs on. I don't really understand the point of it, but it's cool. It's really interesting. Some pinups. Really starting to lean down into the fine line black and gray stuff here that you're going to see like Jack Rudy really and a ton of other you know, Los Angeles Chicano artists take off and just run with in the 80s. I feel like, like I guess I mentioned Jack Rudy, but like he's known in the tattoo community so much, but there was, you know, he's like the white guy version of what we all reference when there was like, I mean, this was huge in that culture in Los Angeles in, you know, the Latinx community. Some cool pages. I love the patina on these. Sailor and his Hawaiian girl. This snake and cross is super cool. I love the front facing snake. I mean, it's kind of a ballsy move, I feel like, for 1959. Just normally you'd see it to the side or maybe a top down. Oh, that's cool. A bunch of just getting lettering. I like how this one says, and it's over here smaller on the actual page, but it says social security number. That's dark because you got to remember this is 1940s, 1950s, so it's a bunch of sailors and enlisted people getting their stuff tattooed on them in case basically they get blown up or something. It's kind of it's dark stuff, but it was, I'm sure, in kind of a way you're declaring that you're probably going to die over there, and there's something about letting go of that maybe that allows you to do what you have to do when you're going over into war and stuff. So as simple of a page as this seems, I feel like this is one of the more striking pages we've seen. Zeke Owens, 1968, really more a lot of that kind of biker, imagery. Here's this man's ruin, girl in the martini glass that I was talking about, that ends up, at this point, it's its own thing. It's totally a different thing. It has nothing to do with kind of the 20s movie reference. But this images you really start seeing surface in like the 40s, I feel like. And then, but by now, 1968, it's its own different thing, and it really has nothing to do with that movie or even kind of nostalgia for the films and musicals of that time period. I really like this oversized like bobblehead biker with the scarf. It's kind of cool. Shrunken head. Bob Shaw tattooing here. Really cool back piece. He's trying to do some Japanese things, and some of it's really working, some of it's not so much, but you got to give credit where credit's due. That's pretty cool. 1940s. Love the color on this Bob Shaw page. The colors in this bulldog are great. The fighting tiger is really cool. Burt Grimm and Bob Shaw. Burt Grimm on this one. Bob Shaw's on the next page. Love the kind of camo on this helmet. It's super simple, but you understand that's supposed to read as camo on both of these. So in this one's Bob Shaw. Man, that panther is like perfect. I love the little bit of yellow in the face. The smoking reaper. Lou Lewis, Burt Grimm's Long Beach, California, 1940s. The colors on this are so cool for 1940s. They're just like fluorescent. That panther is just like perfect. I love it. The shading on it is simple yet really dynamic. This little flamingo is kind of fun, and the snake and this pinup here are just, I feel like the layout is really, really nice. Like you could see it for a forum. Like he's gonna make it bulkier up here because it's gonna sit on the top of a forum where you have more meat, but then go down as it's going down the forearm, right? And that's just really thinking about the shape of where you want that tattoo to go. Here's a Gibson girl. Like I said in the Dietzel book, there's kind of a period where, the Gibson girl has gone away and then really gets traded out for the Brinkley girl. But I feel like in tattoos, the Gibson girl is really stuck around a lot more. But you do see some like kind of Brinkley girls pop up here and there. (1983), probably referencing, I can't remember the artist's name, but who really did a lot of these kind of like nude tattooed models. Here's a great page, text row again. Really great, flow of color on all these, and once again, pretty much just red, green, yellow on all these tattoos. Kind of standouts on this page, which obviously they put on here. But the centipede is really cool. I feel like this dragon is awesome. I like this little yellow scorpion is really cool too. Just good design, good kind of weight to everything. Here we've got Zeke Owens, 1976, really playing around with kind of trying to get down a lot of that classic Japanese tattooing. This almost looks like it's taken from Gifu Hide, who around this time really was kind of communicating with a lot of, American, European artists, especially Ed Hardy, who later on, we got to skip this next one because there's kind of some naked photos on that one. Don't want YouTube to take this video down. This page is okay. I don't really love that peacock. I feel like the tail is just too... Peacock images are so hard in traditional tattoos. It's like this crazy tail can just get to be too much. And this is a fine example of like the tail just, it didn't work really. I've seen it nailed a bunch, but this time really isn't doing it. I like this parrot piece, so I don't really care for the monkey down here. It's missized compared to the parrot, and really, I mean, the image from here up works so much better without having that down there. Tennessee Dave, 1979. Really cool images. That's straight from, a Japanese reference. I've used the reference that that Tennessee Dave is using before. And it's cool to see it done like this. I love how flat the head and it just goes right into the neck and shoulders of the tiger. I love to do that too. I think it looks really fun. The koi is cool. The panther kind of crouching down, off that rock is really rad. Stanley Moskowitz, Bowery Stan. These are 1930s and 1940s. Some of this stuff is very kind of rough and tumbly, and it's got that Bowery style of just like, get it done. Here we've got some imagery, and it's kind of along the same lines of like you see some of the Native American imagery too in a lot of this stuff. Here's unknown artists, but you've got like the dagger going through this head of what was a hairstyle of Chinese immigrants back in the day. And, this image really speaks to probably a lot of the hate and bigotry that was going on for immigrants in general, but definitely the Chinese immigrants of the time. So, here's where I was talking earlier, and along with a lot of the Native American imagery too. But yeah, of where some of this stuff is just propaganda. And it honestly just kind of just straight comes from a hateful place. And that is a history of American and European tattoos. You know what I mean? Here you can show that this was 1930s, 1940s, and we're still talking about immigration as an issue in America, even though all of us really aren't from here. So, this is stuff that can just, in my opinion, it can just, we can document it and know that it existed because I think we need to have a history of it. We should never forget that it was there, but, we don't need to tattoo that stuff anymore. Some cool stuff. This cowgirl's really, for 1919, really just, this person, Ed Smith, probably just straight ripped that from a advertisement, I would guess. Some fun little stuff. Cool Rose of No Man's Land, which was a reference to the Rose of No Man's Land. If you don't know, is a reference to World War One. The nurses that would be out there saving a lot of these men's lives often wore these big crosses on their chests or heads and stuff like that, and they're in all white. And so these military men would save these angels with crosses, coming to save them, and it's really these nurses, which are coming to save their lives. Once again, we've got Native American imagery here. To me, in the more so, this stuff is painted in a little bit more positive light. It doesn't outwardly seem aggressive or negative, but I think it's still important to note that even just this in general is, tattoos in general do come down to being kind of propaganda of sorts, or they almost have to, every image has to be almost like stereotype. Like even the rose, it's you have to boil it down so much to its simplest form that even a rose becomes a stereotype of what you view as a rose. So it becomes very troublesome when you get into racial stereotypes and stuff like that, which is not uncommon in American traditional tattoos. So I think it's always important, just to be aware of that stuff if you're tattooing it, and just to even take a second to go, do I need to be tattooing this? I don't have the answer for you, but I'm just, say it's not a bad thing to just even think about before you tattoo it. All right, on to this Paul Rogers 1950s stuff. I really love the colors. I love the use of yellow in here. The yellow in this wolf is really interesting and kind of unexpected. Same thing in the skull. I wouldn't have expected, especially in 1950s, to put yellow in a skull, but it's really working. Yeah. Some more Burt Grimm, 1940s and 1950s. Love the blue backgrounds, and it's just really popping with all the kind of reds and whatnot that he put in here. Some simple stuff. Bill Mumford. Curly Allen. Very simple. Ted Eanman, earlier 1950s stuff. I like this eagle and this black rose. That's really cool. I don't really understand someone like stretching out her pants here. That just doesn't really make too much sense to me. I like the colors in this native person and the arrowhead. It's just good use of color, good rhythm, like the greens down here and yellows in the braids of the hair kind of mirrored up top in the feathers and stuff and the eyes. So there's good use of color in that. Once again, great rhythm and flow and color usage in this Burt Grimm 1940s, 50s piece. Just similarly colors creating all the flow throughout that piece. Some more simple stuff. We'll kind of blow through some of this. Some of it's just okay, to be quite honest. Some more kind of Zeke Owens 1960s stuff. This is 1968. A little less on the hippie end. There's a really cool snake and skull here. Really love that one. The flow and the red in the eyes and nose, which mirror the little bit of red in the snake that's popping through, because you got red, 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 red. Really makes that thing move. Those are some good daggers. Burt Grimm, yeah, 1940s. And, you see Sailor Jerry, pretty much straight steal this one. Actually, both of them, really. And refine them, I should say. Not just straight stealing, but he's taking them. I'm sure they're trading flash and he's just refining it. Some great panther images. I love that one, that kind of front-facing one. Super cool. And you can see all those rows of teeth back there. And I love this simple one with the name. That is Ace Harley, 1959. Some more good stuff. Some kind of fun, kind of biker hippie images. You know, you could choose peace or whatever, peace, but yet flicking them off. This is more cool Burt Grimm stuff. I love the drunk again, green little, you know, devil boy. This stuff's just kind of whatever. A lot of little tattoos here. What do we got here? Tennessee Dave, 1960s, 70s. And this is probably the heyday of it. It's a little bit more conservative, so he's making these kind of like for women tattoos of these tiny little things because I feel like... And I wonder if kind of the more conservative designs for women in the 70s were part of maybe women more entering in the workforce more heavily. And so, you know, there's no stop of women getting tattoos by this point, but maybe they're getting them smaller and more discreet places because, you know, at the time of the 70s, you know, they just don't want something like a tattoo to be showing because of there's already discrimination in the workplace. So it's a kind of interesting thing that, I mean, I feel like tattoo artists, you know, since it was always such a male-dominated industry, especially up to this point, you know, they're always like looking like, oh, these little ones. But if you look at really early stuff, you know, women were getting big tattoos, you know, around the turn of the century up, I would say, until like kind of the 40s, 50s. And then there's a lot of conservatism, you know, in the 50s, early 60s. But then I feel like, yeah, you see this whole page here. It's a full page that's probably designed for women. I would beg to, I could be wrong. It doesn't say that anywhere on here, but I'm assuming here. And I think that the smallness of it, I would believe, you know, you think about that as joining the workforce, and so we're hiding them a little bit more. I really love the simplicity of both of these female faces. Just really cool, and just the stark black of the hair. There's no shading, kind of just big black, but there's some cool movement in there. The mother-father one is really cool. Love that horse head. It's two little cupies. This is a great page. 1940s, 1950s. Leon Miller, 1950s, 1960s. Got some classic, you know, the happy and crying babies on both these different, you know, here's a later version, or maybe an earlier version. Yeah, it's kind of cool. You'd probably get this and then put, you know, Ethan, or I don't know, at that time what would be like Dick, you know, for your son or something like that, or Jane for your daughter. Let's see, what do we got here? These are cool. This is Burt Grimm, 1940s and 1950s. Once again, always kills it with these cool color backgrounds. I love the really dumbed down version of the Coyote and the Roadrunner. That is super cool to me, and just the funky colors. Next page, all this stuff is Bob Shaw. The cool vulture there is really cool. The mouse and the cheese. Lou Lewis, 1940s. Really good color. I feel like a lot of those people in the 1940s, man, they had such a limited color palette they could work with, but they really just, you know, realized what they could do with such a, you know, minimal amount of color. And they played with it and really honed it, I feel like. Paul Rogers, 1950s. You know, here we're really getting into playing with some of really dumbing down and Americanizing a lot of that Japanese imagery. I mean, bunch of pinups. Unknown artist from the UK. Probably Burt Grimm again here. Really love this page. This thing is so cool. I wonder who this is. Coney Island Joe did this page. And it almost looks printed to me. I bet all the black was printed and then just hand painted. Really cool. Just the rhythm. I mean, you can see just the whole page has a rhythm to it with those colors, but each individual design still does too. Really cool stuff. Here we got some earlier 1920s, 1930s stuff. Really kind of looks like Dietzel or like George Burchett in a lot of ways. So it's USA, so maybe neither of them, but this snake has a very Burchett feel to it to me. Some cool pinups like the green in that bathing suit. The flow of the nightgown on that one is pretty cool. Hair on that one's really rad. But yeah, that's pretty much this book. There's some pretty cool stuff in here. And I think a lot of the takeaway from this is, you know, when you're designing American traditional tattoos, I think really thinking about the rhythm of your black and then the rhythm of your color. I think that's, you know, really essential with American European traditional tattoos, because that's where most of your movement is coming from. You're not oftentimes relying on flow quite as much. The flow is mainly in your color and in your black. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment boxes below. Please subscribe, tell your friends. We're hoping to I want to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. That really helps us. It allows us monetize this channel, and then I can go deeper in depth. I really want to start doing stuff where I break apart tattoos and show why something is working with diagrams and stuff like that. And I would really like to not have to do it on a Patreon. And the sooner we can monetize the channel, the sooner I can do stuff like that. So if you want to see that, subscribe to this channel, tell your friends to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye y'all.